don't particularly remember having a dream this time around, but I do remember waking up rather disoriented and hearing ringing in my ears. The way I was situated, I could see underneath my bed. While distorted, I didn't realize that I couldn't move. When I finally realized what was happening, a demonic figure rushed at me from underneath my bed so incredibly fast that I could barely register what it looked like. Hey y'all, welcome back. So I hope you're okay. Pete, my cat just ran right into my tripod. You okay? I hope you guys are okay with 2 follower story videos in a row. I planned on posting my Mimic updated video story time thing today, but it's taken me a while to go through everything that happened and write it all down so I don't ramble. So that's going to be next week. So my goal is next Monday, I'm going to do a breakdown of all of the new horror that I've watched this month, which hasn't been a lot, actually. I've been super busy this month, but I'm going to do a breakdown of all of those. And I promise to try to watch more next month so I have more to talk about. But I'm going to post that Monday, and then Wednesday I should have the Mimic video up for you guys, and then we'll do a follower story video Friday. As always, if you have any creepy stories that you would like for me to read, please send them in the email in the description, and just put in the little header bar area thing, YouTube, or I will read them on TikTok not knowing. So I'm super bummed that you can't see my shirt because it's so cute. It has a little heart. I feel like very Sabrina Carpenter core. All right, let's start reading the stories. This first one is a sleep paralysis story from Louisiana, and they sent 3 short stories. First story is titled The Dream Mimic. This was back when I was a freshman in high school. For some context, our morning routine consisted of me and my brother waking up at 6 a.m. and eating breakfast in front of the TV. Then we fell back asleep on the couch until our mom woke us up for school. This morning was different though. We ate our breakfast as normal while watching Cartoon Network. I fell asleep and started dreaming. I was in a haunted hotel that I owned, offering rooms to thrill seekers or customers who had nowhere to sleep for the night. That sounds very me-core. I would definitely do that. My best friend in the dream told me that he had nowhere else to stay and needed a room. The only room I had left was the most haunted one in the hotel. Reluctantly, I set him up in that room and returned to my own sleep. Once I closed my eyes in the dream, I awoke back on my couch. Across from the couch was my best friend in the bed from the hotel. He looked different though, as if his colors were drained, and he was painted. He ran across from the front of the couch and was behind where my little brother was laying. I could only move my eyes as I saw his face twist and distort into a demonic smile, with a face that was not his own. Immediately, I shut my eyes and heard demonic laughter. I started to pray and the laughter turned into screams as my movement returned to me. The next one is titled Rushed. This takes place in my senior year of high school. After a long and stressful day at school, I get home, place my bags down, and pass out on the floor of my room. I don't particularly remember having a dream this time around, but I do remember waking up rather disoriented and hearing ringing in my ears. The way I was situated, I could see underneath my bed. While distorted, I didn't realize that I couldn't move. When I finally realized what was happening, a demonic figure rushed at me from underneath my bed so incredibly fast that I could barely register what it looked like. After it rushed me, it disappeared, and my ears filled with deep demonic laughter once again. After the laughter subsided, I was able to move again. The third story, it moved me. This one takes place in either the same week or month of the previous story and took place again in my senior year in high school. After another stressful day of school, I came back home and immediately fell asleep in the middle of my floor, sprawled out. I awoke to the feeling of me being moved. When I opened my eyes, I couldn't tell that I was slowly being moved underneath my bed. I started to freak out and realized that I couldn't move. I could tell that if I went underneath my bed, something terrible was going to happen. Feeling helpless and wanting to scream but not being able to, I started to cry silently. All of a sudden, a bright light flashed from my doorway and a figure entered my room. I couldn't see the face, but when they placed their hand on my chest, I was able to move again. There are just some of my sleep paralysis stories. Thank you so much for reading them if you decide to. I hate sleep paralysis. I've only had it a handful of times, and it's horrifying. One of those times was like a Hatman situation, but it is terrifying. Okay, this next story takes place in Curtis, Washington. About 7 years ago, I worked in a small town called Curtis, Washington that was nothing but farmland and woods. There are 3 events that happened over the course of 1 year. One of the experiences was witnessing 1 out of 2 trees in a cemetery catching on fire. The fire didn't spread. It was only that one tree and a big cross that was up on the hill in that little cemetery caught fire. The cemetery had graves for young children and 3 elderly people from the late 1800s and early 1900s. The next event happened at night when I was living at one of the major 3 houses on the property at the time, and right behind my room is the beginning of a forest. One night I was awoken by the sound of little kids laughing outside. At first I thought it was my boss's kids because they lived on the property as well, but when I saw what time it was, I realized they wouldn't even be awake. It happened at 3:15 in the morning and it went on for about an hour. I looked outside and I didn't see any kids, and I see two sets of eyes coming from the trees at the beginning of our forest. I closed my curtain fast and turned on my lights for the rest of the night. My third experience happened 3 months after hearing the children laughing. Me and a bunch of my coworkers went to one of our old RVs that we had on the property towards the back end where there was big untouched meadow to kind of party. It was pitch black and all we had was our phone lights. It was particularly clouded that night, so the moon was blocked by clouds for a good portion of the time we were out in the RV. Well, when the clouds cleared, we could see the meadow, and my friend noticed about 700 yards out, it looked like someone was standing at the entrance. She told me to look, and I thought, well, we have an intruder, because we had issues with people trespassing on property before. My friend went out and yelled at them that they need to leave before we call the cops, and it just stood there. Suddenly, me and my friend got a weird feeling, and we felt like we needed to go back to the house. So we all got out and we were going to start walking back towards the house until we saw this thing start full dashing towards us. We ran as fast as we could to the house without looking back, but whatever was running towards us started howling, or something like that. It gave us chills down to our spines. When we got back into the house, we all locked the doors and windows. My friend looked out to see if we could see anything, or the figure coming towards us. But all my friend saw were eyes looking in from the forest. After that day, we quit. The eyes. That's terrifying. Another Louisiana story. For backstory, my family has a past with paranormal activity and spirits. We had our old house blessed due to a demonic spirit. It had thrown objects at my sister. It was really bad. I don't remember that very well because I was so young, but we have been exposed to stuff like this before. Well, this story takes place around 6 years ago. I'd recently moved into my new house, which is a very old and most likely haunted home. I was having a sleepover with my cousin. He had fallen asleep and I had my back turned to both of the beds in my room. These beds were in the back two corners of the room and I was facing the opposite way. I was sitting at my desk playing Minecraft. I had my headphones off and my cousin was asleep, snoring very loudly. This was around 2:30 to 3 in the morning if I remember correctly. About an hour after he fell asleep, I heard my name being whispered. It wasn't a man's voice, so I knew immediately that was not my cousin. It sounded like a very old lady, and it sounded like she was asking for me, like with a question mark at the end of my name. I was fairly young and I was freaked out. I woke up my cousin and obviously he said he didn't do it. I told my parents the next morning and they brushed it off as me being sleep deprived, but I had a gut feeling that it wasn't that. After this happened, I constantly felt as if I was being watched from the corner of my room that the whisper had came from. It was always an uneasy feeling. Nothing really happened, but I had a bad gut feeling each time I looked in that corner. In 2022, I took a lot of time to learn and study about the spiritual world and finally cleansed my room. I haven't felt this weird presence ever since I cleansed. I don't know whether it was evil or just an old lady who previously lived here, but it was definitely terrifying when it happened. I'd say so. Oh my gosh. So I've had things call my name before, and while it is troubling to hear something that like you think is a friend or a relative, it's even worse when you don't recognize it. Like if you don't recognize the voice and you just hear someone calling your name, it's a lot. All right, let's read another. I've been debating whether or not to tell this story because compared to the ones you share and to others, it may not seem scary, but it was one of the most terrifying things to happen to me. Please bear with me. I'm not the best storyteller, but I'll try to write this out to make sense. I live in northern Indiana. It's about 10 minutes drive to Michigan, and I have some stories from where I lived in Michigan too. I want those stories. I'm obsessed with Michigan stories. I'll start it off with saying that I think I am sensitive to a degree. I don't see ghosts or have full conversations with them, but I can feel the energy and emotions of things around me. This first incident happened when I was 10 or 11. I'm the youngest of four and I share a room with my older sister who would have been 14 or 15. Naturally, being the youngest, I slept on the top bunk. This detail is important to the story. One night we were going to bed and pulled out my MP3 player to listen to music when I shouldn't have been. I must have drifted off at this point because I remember waking up with the faint sound of mid-2000s music playing, but that isn't what woke me. I had this heavy feeling of dread consume me, like something was very wrong. I tried to talk it off to that I was feeling guilty for sneaking my MP3 in my bed and falling asleep listening to music when I should have been sleeping. I moved around in the dark to find my MP3 and shut it off. I took a few seconds and then I finally realized why I had this terrible feeling. Not 3 feet from my head was this tall, dark figure watching me. I knew it was tall because the top of it came past the bars of my bunk bed. Being a kid, I remember my bunk bed being very tall. If you Google tall, dark, hooded figure, this is exactly what I saw. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just stood there for what felt like forever. It was darker than the night. I didn't know what to do in this situation, so I slowly got back to a position where I could go to sleep. I closed my eyes and lay there for what felt like an eternity. I know that it wasn't sleep paralysis because I'd woken up and physically moved to find my MP3, shut it off, and then looked over to discover I was being watched. And I didn't move or open my eyes back up because I was sure it was going to be closer to me. I never did see that figure again, but anytime I wake up in the middle of the night randomly, I expect to see him again or worse, next to my kids' bunk bed when I check on them at night. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing other stories. I enjoy both your YouTube and TikTok. Your cats are cute. Pete, you got a shout out! Are you so happy? Are you so happy? They think you're cute. I think you're cute too. All right, let's read one more story, and then I will leave you guys alone until next week. Hi, my name is also Morgan. Twin! I live in a small historical town in Illinois, just around an hour and 45 minutes away from Chicago. This story happened when I was either 8 or 9, my little brother being around 5 or 6. For some context before I begin, at this time in my life, my mom was the only member of my family who worked. My dad would stay home with me and my little brother all day. He would take us to and from school, etc. My mom worked at a bank about 35 minutes away from the house. At this time in my life, I went by Kristen. My brother's name is Ben. This encounter happened at around 11 a.m., I think. It was the beginning of winter, and there was still remnants of fall. I remember it being slightly foggy and cloudy, but this could just be how my memory works. Ben and I were playing in the backyard of our neighbors who lived across the street. There were at least 4 or 5 of us, including my little brother and I. Since it was around 11 in the morning, my mom had just left for work, but Ben and I left the garage door open so we could play with our outside toys and get back to our house since we kept the front door locked. We played for an hour or so, and the whole group heard my mom's voice call, "Kristen? Ben?" in the exact same tone my mom would usually call us back into the house with. As being kids, we all first were bummed out because we needed to go back inside. Thankfully, I realized that she is, in fact, not home, and that she had just left for work. I thought at first maybe she came back from home because something had happened and she needed Ben and I to help with something, but I had this feeling in my stomach that made me sick. I told my friends that our mom wasn't home at the time, and I asked them to come to check to see if our mom was calling us. We walked out the back gate and into my neighbor's yard, into the driveway, since we were able to see our house from that area. My mom's car was not even in the garage. I managed to be brave enough, or dumb enough, depending on how you see this, to tell my neighbors to watch Ben for me to go inside to our friend's house. After they went inside, I walked over to our house and opened the garage door to talk to my dad to see if someone called us using our mom's voice. I don't remember seeing anything weird, no misshapen animals or shadow figures. I just had this uneasy feeling. Anyway, I went up to my dad and asked if Mom was home, even though her car wasn't in the garage. He looked at me confused and said, "No," which I knew he would say. Then I asked if he had called Ben and I in, saying we all heard Mom's voice coming from our house. He just looked even more confused and said no again. I told him that Ben and the other kids went into the neighbor's house because we were scared. I can't remember where that conversation went after that point. I just remember anxiously walking back across the street to my neighbor's front door. We decided to play inside for the rest of that day. My brother and I, now being 18 and 14, still both remember that day. It's a terrifying core memory of mine. Ever since I found out what flesh pedestrians are, I've only become more worried of what lingers in my neighborhood. The second story is brief and more recent. It happened only a week or so ago at the time that I'm writing this. It was around 11 at night, and I'd been staying up late because of my recent obsession with Stardew Valley. I had just gotten out of the shower a few minutes prior to this, so I was just relaxing and watching and listening to a Twitch stream while my cat watched me do my skincare. For reference, my window was closed, and so were my curtains. My bedroom is the same one I slept in as a child when my previous story happened. This bedroom only has one window that faces the backyard, yet you can still see my neighbors' houses. I have 2 fence gates on either side of my home, but we kept both locked since we have dogs and of course my cat. As I was changing into my pajamas and putting on some deodorant, I heard a very clear whistle. It was 2 tones. At first I thought it was someone from the stream I was watching since it was a competitive video game tournament. I thought maybe someone from the stream was taunting the other team, but my cat was now sitting up and looking towards the window. Now, me being older, I knew not to acknowledge whatever or whoever made this sound, but for some reason I did. I said to my cat, "What was that, kitty?" Thinking that I was probably just paranoid from my lack of sleep and that it was in fact someone just whistling on the stream. I calmed my cat down and waited a few minutes to see if anything else would happen. I thought that somehow the neighbors that lived right around me were up partying, even though I had heard no music, voices, or any signs of people being up this late. The whistle was loud too. At first I thought maybe I didn't close my window, but after waiting a few more minutes, I quickly lifted the corner of my curtain to see the window was closed. After that, I waited a bit longer before going to bed. Based on my previous childhood experience, I didn't like that it was just my cat and I awake. After playing the waiting game and not hearing anything else from outside, I decided to just go to bed. I told myself that when the streamer uploads the VOD on YouTube, I'll rewatch it, just to see if it was someone from the stream whistling. I somehow managed to convince myself that it was actually from the stream and nothing more. But after rewatching the whole VOD, not a single person whistled that whole stream. I'm unsure of what to do. Soon I'll be moving out into my grandparents' house who live in a different town for college. I'm hoping that everything just stops. Something else about my neighborhood though, my family and I don't really do much outside. Not that we're lazy, we just have this odd feeling that we're being watched. Even my parents have said it felt like someone was watching whenever they're outside, and they don't believe in the paranormal. My brother and I were raised Christian, but after a few years of not going to church, I felt like I fit better as being a pagan. I do have some protection words up, but I don't really know what to do when encountering something along the lines of what I believe to be a flesh pedestrian, or at least some being that mimics people in some way. Please let me know what you think I should do if you can. My family and I haven't been physically hurt or absolutely tormented by this thing, so I don't know how worried I should be. Thanks for reading. So I know you mentioned that you have words up. I've dealt with the same thing, and I lined my windows and like door frames with black salt. You could also put selenite sticks up. Some people have said to use like iron stakes and put them around your windows and doors, just like put them on the wall or something. I haven't done that, but I did do black salt and I've done selenite and it works. It makes me feel better at least. But yeah, that's what I recommend. I'm glad it's not like escalating more than that, but it's still not fun. But you're making the right call by ignoring stuff. Just continue doing that and hopefully it doesn't follow you, and tell your brother to do the same thing. All right, y'all, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next week.